Hey everyone, this is Pause or Repeat. Here we figure out whether a game is really worth your time and money. Today's game is MIO Memories in Orbit. What is MIO Memories in Orbit? It is a sci-fi metroidvania with a unique aesthetic reminiscent of illustrations and comic books. In the game, you control a small robot named MIO. As MIO, your mission is to explore and restore the memories of the vessel, a spaceship overrun by vegetation and malfunctioning machines. You'll also have the usual metroidvania abilities like a grapple, double jump, wall climb, and more to make exploration plentiful. As you explore, you'll come across various different difficult scenarios, from boss fights to platforming, all while a killer soundtrack plays. But now the question still stands: pause or repeat? And another Metroidvania, doesn't it feel like Metroidvanias are just like a bread and butter genre of the indie scene? Wouldn't you think so, Chris?
Well, I just feel like, with the success of Silk Song, a lot of people are really getting excited all over again to embrace, this platform gaming that's beyond just a Nintendo world, right? And so when you get a kind of style of game where it makes you imagine, what if I woke up in space with no memories, a dying ship, and the creeping suspicion that everything around you is either broken, angry, or both, right, Henrik? Cool? No pressure, right? No, not so fast.
Yeah, and that is pretty much a typical thing for the Metroidvania scene, where, the game will drop you into an environment and you don't really know what's going on. You kind of have to piece it together yourself. Or if you do have a backstory, somehow you don't have anything that you did in the previous games, if this is a sequel, or you just start with nothing. It's in the title, Metroid. What game does that? Metroid.
Yeah, I mean, it grabbed from inspiration from previous games that we all adore, and clearly you could see it with this game. The developers put a lot of heart into this, and yeah, you're right, Henrik. I mean, you're going to be dropping into the metal bones of what they call the vessel. It's this colossal technological arc that's drifting through space that looks like it lost a fight with time, I would say, nature, and its own security system in a sense, right, Henrik? And so when the game drops you into
I was going to say, visually, they really show and drive home the point that at the end of the day, when you and I are both long gone, nature reclaims everything.
Yeah.
Because nature has reclaimed the ship entirely.
And when a game drops you into a mystery as thick, like right at the start of the gate, right? Are you immediately hooked or suspicious that it'll be like another cliche sci-fi story? Because that's kind of how I felt like in the beginning. I was like, oh man, I feel like I've heard this kind of story before. But then once the narrative starts to unfold, like you're piecing together a diary that's been shredded and then launched into zero gravity, you start to really get hooked as playing as MIO.
Yeah, it is definitely slow to start off with the story, because you start with no understanding of what's going on. You got to visually put things together of what's happened to this ship, the vessel. And
well, what's kind of funny, Henrik? I don't mean to cut you off, but it's like this whole game's all about forgetting memories. Didn't it feel like the first 45 minutes made you feel like you forgot how to play a platform game? It took so long just to kick into the... I was like, man, this is a long tutorial, but it's a mission, but it's quite long.
Yeah, and like you said, when you hit around the halfway point of, I would say this being about like a 15, maybe a little bit more hour-long game, just for the story itself, it does definitely click everything in place for you, and you start to be like, okay, actually, this game is sick. I'm really digging this. And that's already on top of you being presented with a really cool visual art style and very, very solid gameplay on top of that, where, it's not as hard as Silk Song, but it doesn't need to be as hard as Silk Song to be fun. Right. And it's still challenging. It's not like you're not going to be walking into a room with a boss and maybe dying to that boss a few times before you actually take him down, or trying to do some platforming and failing the platforming a few times. That's definitely happened to me.
There's some pain in the ass bosses that I encounter. I'm blanking out right now. It was either like these guys named Soul or Vin. I know that
Oh
They are
yeah.
highlighting that there's like over 30 different enemy types, 15 guardian bosses that you'll encounter. There's even a secret
Mhm.
boss, by the way. You think even when the credits roll that the game's over. No, 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 no. Holy moly. And I think that's what makes it so freaking good is that a lot of people probably finished the game and didn't even realize it's like, holy cow, there's a lot more that you can unpack inside of this game because it's like you said, Henrik, it's like the vessel, it turns into like the universe's most expensive abandoned project, and you're trying to piece together what happened to this permanent space junk that's collapsing all around you. And you're just this little android.
Yeah, you really are just a small little robot exploring everything. But that, in a way, it helps you visualize as well how grand of a stage you've been thrust into, where this ship is massive. Like, not only just because you're a small little robot, but just it is a massive ship in general. And as a result of that, there's plenty to explore, which is typical for a Metroidvania, but that's not a bad
sometimes
thing.
you're even like stuck just looking at the backgrounds. I mean, a lot of the game feels like it's a sci-fi graphic novel soaked in watercolor. I mean, you're gonna see a lot of like
easily take a screenshot from anywhere in this game, and that would be a killer background to have on my computer.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely really cool color palettes in the game, splashed with these purples and reds and yellows that really make the vessel feel alien and alive in a sense, even though there's a lot of dying robotics happening all around you. And like you said, at its core, it's very Metrovania. It demands that precision and patience. It will reward you for the flow. And some of those cool mechanics will be, grapple, glide. I mean, even before you started the segment, probably a lot of people were like, wait, we're covering Arc Raiders all over again, especially with the grapple hook. But no, how did you feel with the whole idea with like backtracking? Because like that's a big factor in this game, where especially when you're going through those cracked corridors, they got vents and the ruins, and you're going to be upgrading MIO, scavenging for these enemy parts and stacking modifiers that actually do change how you play. But how did you like that kind of progression? Because I feel like it works for this game, but not every game for me. Sometimes I'm like, I want to see something new every chapter.
That's fair. It's totally understandable to want to see something new when you unlock something like a new ability that unlocks more things to do. Yeah, let's just move forward is the idea in a lot of games. But in this genre, it's typical that you'll come across something and you'll be like, I can't interact with this yet. And then a couple hours later, you get an ability and you're like, now it clicks in my head.
Right.
This ability I got, I can now go back to this thing I found 2 hours ago and I can unlock it. When you have that flow, the backtracking ends up becoming actually really rewarding because you start to mentally click in your head, oh, okay, this is the linear path they want me to go, even though it's not actually linear necessarily,
right?
In the sense of like a line through the map. It's just linearly you go from here to here.
Yeah, and I would also say too, I feel like the Guardian bosses in game are very rewarding, especially when you have to do the backtracking. Yeah. So like once you get to that like one stump in the road, I suppose, was there a certain boss that really stuck out to you? I mean, Atmos was pretty hilarious. Naboo, that like gold.
Naboo is a good one.
Reindeer or deer in a sense. And then Soul and Vin, holy cow, probably the biggest pain in the ass in game. And then there's others, but I don't want to say their names because they would.
Yeah, you don't really want to spoil too much of the boss fights because you guys really should.
You got to pick up the pieces, gamers.
Experience it yourself.
Exactly.
But, Soul and Vin were definitely a standout for me. Also, I would say.
But I would say though, Henrik, I mean, as MIO regains memories, the narrative slowly tightens. I mean, by the second half, things start clicking in a way that recontextualizes everything that you've been doing. And so, Henrik, did you feel that moment where the game quietly flips the table of like what you thought was going on, did that work for you? Because, without trying to say too much, but I mean, I personally felt like the last 3 hours is the best part of the ride in this game. Yeah, for sure.
No, I agree. There is a huge payoff at that last arc.
I feel
of
like
the
you looked at
story.
me like you just set me up for like to be the guy that spoils the game.
Yeah, don't say too much,
Yeah.
because don't want to spoil it. But yeah, like that last arc of the game really is the big payoff, and it doesn't always work with stories to have a big payoff at the end when the pacing is maybe a little slow up until that
Right.
point. But what really keeps you hooked up until you start to piece things together and get hooked on the story is the intrigue of what's going on, and also the gameplay keeping you entertained. And then the story, when it starts to kick in, like, okay, now this game is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you, Henrik. I feel like Mio Memories in Orbit sticks the landing with smart design, it's confident storytelling, and just a world that rewards curiosity without holding your hand. And I think that's what makes it great. And so for me, this is absolutely a repeat. You're going to have a blast playing this game. But then I got to hand it to you, Henrik the Wreck. What's the verdict from your end?
Yeah, this is an absolute repeat as well for me. I love me a good Metroidvania, and this is definitely one to keep in your back pocket when you ever want to just spend some
Funny
time.
that you said that back pocket,
do
because
that
this is
all
like the
over
perfect
again.
game. If you're traveling,
Oh yeah, it's
you know
great
what
for
I
the
mean?
Steam
Like,
Deck.
yeah, exactly.
Absolutely perfect.
This would be, yeah, this game is really perfect for that. It should sell very, very well on Nintendo as well, I would think. And
Yes.
obviously PS Portal kind of needs to figure it out. But yeah, you can still be a couch potato, grind it out like I did. See, we're still out there, Gam. But tell us, gamers, are you diving into Mio Memories in Orbit to unravel the Vestal secrets, or are you settling your sights on another adventure in your backlog galaxy? Because that's starting to be what it looks like. Thousands of little mini planets or video games that have been lost and unexplored. Let us know what's good.